The wagon wheels groaned beneath Fiona Foster's weight as she pressed her back against the rough wooden slats, trying to make herself smaller while her stepfather bartered her life away to a stranger for livestock and leather. "She can cook, clean, and keep a house," her stepfather was saying, his voice thick with whiskey and greed. "Strong girl, too. Works hard without complaining much." Fiona's fingers gripped the worn fabric of her only decent dress, a faded blue cotton that had seen better days before the war. The year was 1873, and she was sitting in the back of a supply wagon in the dusty Colorado town of Manassas, listening to the only family she had left sell her like chattel. Her mother had died 2 winters ago, leaving her alone with a man who had never wanted a stepdaughter and had made that abundantly clear from the moment they lowered her mother into the frozen ground. "Let me see her properly, then," a gravelly voice responded. Fiona's stomach lurched. Through the gap in the wagon covering, she could see the outline of a large man, broad-shouldered and imposing against the afternoon sun. "Fiona, get down here," her stepfather commanded, and she had no choice but to obey. Her legs trembled as she climbed down from the wagon, her worn boots hitting the dusty street. She kept her eyes lowered, unable to bear looking at the man who was apparently willing to trade a horse and saddle for a human being. When she finally dared to glance up, she saw a weathered face with small, calculating eyes that swept over her like she was indeed nothing more than livestock. His teeth were stained brown from tobacco, and his clothes carried the smell of old sweat and campfire smoke. "How old?" the man asked. 20, her stepfather answered quickly. "Prime age. She will give you many years of service." Service. The word made Fiona's skin crawl. She wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but stand there while her fate was decided, but where would she go? She had no money, no prospects, and no family who cared whether she lived or died. The frontier was no place for a woman alone. "I will give you the mare and a decent saddle," the man said after a long moment of consideration. "But I want a bill of sale, make it legal-like." Fiona's heart sank. This was really happening. She was about to become the property of a stranger, traded away like an old plow horse. Her stepfather was already nodding eagerly, probably thinking about how quickly he could spend whatever money he made from selling the horse and saddle. "Now hold on just a minute." The new voice cut through the transaction like a knife through butter. Fiona turned to see a tall cowboy striding toward them, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each purposeful step. He wore a dark hat that shadowed his face, but even from a distance, she could sense an authority in his bearing that the other 2 men lacked. "This is a private matter, friend," her stepfather said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "Move along." "Cannot say that I will," the cowboy replied, stopping a few feet away. Now Fiona could see his face properly. He was younger than she had expected, probably no more than 25, with strong features and eyes the color of prairie sky after a storm. "Because what I just heard sounded an awful lot like human trafficking, which happens to be against the law." "She is my stepdaughter," her stepfather blustered. "I can arrange her marriage however I see fit." "Marriage?" The cowboy's tone dripped with skepticism. He looked at the other man, the one who had been about to trade for Fiona. "You planning to marry this girl, Hendricks?" So the cowboy knew the other man. Hendricks shifted uncomfortably, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "Might be. Might just need help on my claim." "Either way, it is not your concern, Keller." Keller. Fiona committed the name to memory. Xavier Keller. She had heard of him in passing, though she had never seen him before. He ran cattle somewhere north of town and had a reputation for being fair but firm. Some said he was the fastest draw in the San Luis Valley, though Fiona put little stock in such gossip. What mattered now was that he was the first person in longer than she could remember who seemed to think there was something wrong with what was happening to her. "I am making it my concern," Xavier said quietly. There was steel beneath the softness of his words. "Hendrix, you already got one wife who ran off because you beat her half to death. You do not need another woman to abuse." "That is a lie," Hendrix snarled, but his hand had moved closer to the gun at his hip. Fiona felt her breath catch. She did not want anyone to die because of her, especially not a stranger who had no reason to care about her fate. Xavier noticed the movement too. His posture changed subtly, weight shifting to the balls of his feet. "Your hand moves another inch toward that iron, and you will regret it." For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Fiona could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Then Hendrix let out a low curse and stepped back, his hand falling away from his weapon. "She is not worth the trouble anyway," Hendrix muttered. "Too skinny. Keep your horse." He turned and stalked away, leaving Fiona standing with her stepfather and the cowboy who had just saved her from a terrible fate. Relief flooded through her, so intense it made her knees weak. But her relief was short-lived. "Now see what you have done," her stepfather spat at Xavier. "I had a buyer and you scared him off. You owe me compensation." "I owe you nothing," Xavier replied, his tone hardening, "except maybe a trip to the sheriff for attempting to sell a human being. I was not selling her. I was arranging a marriage without her consent, from what I could tell." Xavier turned his attention to Fiona for the first time, and she felt the full weight of his gaze. His eyes were gentler than she expected, curious but not unkind. "Miss, do you want to marry Hendrix?" "No," she said quietly. It was the first word she had spoken since the whole ordeal began, and her voice came out hoarse. "There is your answer," Xavier said to her stepfather. "No deal." Her stepfather's face turned an ugly shade of red. "Then she can make her own way in the world. I am done with her. She eats too much anyway, and she is more trouble than she is worth." With that, he climbed into the wagon and snapped the reins, leaving Fiona standing in the street with nothing but the clothes on her back and a stranger who had intervened on her behalf. She watched the wagon disappear around the corner, carrying away everything she owned, which admittedly was not much. A spare dress, a hairbrush that had been her mother's, a few other small possessions, all gone now. "Well," Xavier said after a moment, "that was unexpected." Fiona did not know whether to laugh or cry. She had just been abandoned in the middle of town with no money, no belongings, and no prospects. At least when she had been in danger of being traded away, she would have had food and shelter, however miserable the conditions might have been. Now she had nothing at all. "Thank you for your intervention," she managed to say, trying to maintain some dignity despite her circumstances. "I should let you return to your business now." She started to walk away, though she had no idea where she was going. Maybe the church would take her in. Maybe someone needed a servant or a cook. Maybe she would just keep walking until she collapsed from exhaustion and let whatever happen happen. "Hold on," Xavier called after her. She stopped but did not turn around, afraid that if she looked at him, she would break down completely. "Where are you going?" "I do not know," she admitted, "but you have done enough. You do not need to concern yourself with me further." She heard his boots on the hard, packed dirt as he walked up behind her. "Miss Foster, is it?" "Yes." "Miss Foster, I cannot in good conscience let you wander off with nowhere to go and nothing to your name. Please, at least let me buy you a meal and we can figure out what comes next." Pride warred with practicality inside her. Pride lost. She was hungry, scared, and alone. If this stranger was offering help, she would be a fool to refuse it. She turned to face him, searching his expression for any sign of ulterior motives. All she saw was genuine concern. "All right," she agreed softly. "Thank you." The hotel restaurant was modest but clean, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh bread wafting from the kitchen. Xavier guided her to a table near the window and ordered them both beef stew and biscuits. Fiona tried not to look too eager when the food arrived, but she could not remember the last time she had eaten a full meal. Her stepfather had kept her on short rations, claiming she needed to learn frugality. Xavier ate in silence for a few minutes, giving her space to satisfy her hunger. When she finally slowed down, he spoke. "I apologize for being forward, but I need to understand your situation fully. You have no other family, no friends who might take you in." Fiona shook her head. "My mother was my only family. When she married my stepfather 5 years ago, I thought I was gaining a father. Instead, I lost everything. After she died, he made it clear I was a burden he could not wait to be rid of." "What about your real father?" "He died in the war. I barely remember him." She wrapped her hands around the warm cup of coffee the waitress had brought. "I know you must think I am pathetic, allowing myself to be in such a position." "I think no such thing," Xavier said firmly. "The world is harsh to women, especially those without protection or means. You have survived circumstances that would have broken many people. That takes strength, not weakness." His words surprised her. Most men she had encountered viewed women as either property or decoration, with little regard for their inner lives or capabilities. "You have an unusual perspective, Mr. Keller." "Xavier, please. And maybe I do. My mother raised me and my brother alone after our father was killed by raiders. I saw firsthand how hard it is for women in this territory. She worked herself to death trying to keep us fed and clothed." There was old pain in his voice. "I swore then that if I ever had the means to help someone in a similar situation, I would." "I am sorry about your mother," Fiona said softly. "When did she pass?" 4 years ago. She lived just long enough to see the ranch start to prosper." He took a sip of his coffee. "Which brings me to a proposition." Fiona stiffened. She had known this was coming. No man offered help without expecting something in return. Xavier must have seen her expression change because he quickly raised a hand. "Not that kind of proposition. I am talking about employment. I need someone to help manage my household. My brother lives on the ranch too, and between the two of us, we have turned the place into a disaster. We can cook basic meals and wash our own clothes, but the house is a mess. We are always running out of supplies because neither of us remembers to keep track, and frankly, we could use someone with organizational skills." "You want to hire me as your housekeeper?" Fiona asked carefully. "Yes. The position would include room and board plus wages. $30 a month. You would have your own room in the main house, and I give you my word that you would be safe and respected. My brother will vouch for my character, as will anyone else in the valley who knows me." $30 a month was more than generous for housekeeping work. It was almost suspiciously generous. "Why?" Fiona asked bluntly. "Why would you offer so much to a stranger?" Xavier leaned back in his chair, considering his answer. "Because you deserve to be paid fairly for your labor. Because I can afford it and you need it. And because I believe every person deserves a chance to build a decent life for themselves." He met her eyes. "You were nearly traded for a horse and saddle today, Miss Foster. I want you to know that you are worth far more than that. Far more than any amount of money, really. But if I am going to employ you, I am going to pay you what your work is worth." Tears stung Fiona's eyes. She could not remember the last time someone had spoken to her with such respect, had treated her like a person with inherent value rather than a burden to be endured. "I do not know what to say. Say yes. Come work for me. If after a month you are unhappy or uncomfortable, I will help you find other arrangements and pay you enough to get started wherever you want to go. But give it a chance. Give yourself a chance to have something better than what you have known." What choice did she really have? She could refuse and try to make her own way in Manasseh, but her prospects were grim. At best, she might find work as a saloon girl or laundress, barely scraping by. At worst, well, she did not want to think about the worst possibilities. Xavier was offering her safety, security, and dignity. Even if his motives were not entirely pure, even if he turned out to be less honorable than he seemed, she would still be better off than she had been with her stepfather. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger now. "I will take the position. Thank you, Xavier." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "You are welcome, Fiona. Now, let us get you some supplies before we head out to the ranch. You will need more than one dress and probably a warmer coat. Winter comes early up in the valley." They spent the rest of the afternoon shopping. Xavier seemed unbothered by the curious looks they received as they moved from the general store to the seamstress shop. Fiona suspected the whole town would be gossiping about them by sunset, but she found she did not care. Let them talk. She had endured worse than wagging tongues. By the time they loaded the last of the packages into Xavier's wagon, the sun was beginning its descent toward the western peaks. The San Juan Mountains rose in the distance, their snow-capped summits glowing pink and gold in the fading light. Fiona had never left Manasseh, and the thought of traveling into those wild spaces both excited and frightened her. "It is about 2 hours to the ranch," Xavier said as he helped her onto the wagon seat. His hands on her waist were brief and respectful, gone as soon as she was settled. "We should arrive just after dark. Do not worry, the road is well traveled and safe enough." As they left town, Fiona took one last look at the place where she had spent the past 5 miserable years. She felt no nostalgia, no regret at leaving. Whatever awaited her at Xavier's ranch had to be better than what she was leaving behind. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the wagon swaying gently over the rutted road. The landscape around them was beautiful in a stark way, with rolling grasslands dotted by clusters of pine trees and the ever-present backdrop of mountains. Cattle grazed in the distance, and once they passed a small herd of pronghorn antelope that bounded away at their approach. "Tell me about your brother," Fiona said eventually, wanting to know what to expect when they arrived. "Xander," Xavier said, and she noticed the warmth in his voice. "He is 2 years younger than me, just turned 23. He is good with the cattle, better than I am in some ways. He has a natural instinct for where to find good grazing and how to keep the herd healthy. Not as good with people, though. He is shy, especially around women." "Will he be upset that you are bringing home a stranger?" "No. I am sure I will get an earful about not consulting him first, but he will understand once I explain the situation. Xander has a good heart. He just hides it under a gruff exterior." The sky had turned deep purple by the time they turned off the main road onto a narrower track. Stars were beginning to emerge, bright and clear in the thin mountain air. Fiona could see lights ahead, warm and welcoming in the gathering darkness. The ranch house was larger than she had expected, a sturdy log structure with a wide front porch and glass windows that spoke of prosperity. There were several outbuildings as well, including a large barn and what looked like a bunkhouse for ranch hands. "We only have 2 hands living here full-time right now," Xavier explained as he pulled the wagon to a stop. "They stay in the bunkhouse. Good men, both of them. They will be respectful, or they will answer to me." Before Fiona could respond, the front door opened and a man emerged onto the porch. Even in the dim light, she could see the family resemblance. Xavier Keller was slightly shorter than his brother, but had the same strong build and similar features. He watched their approach with obvious curiosity. "Xavi, whose packages are those?" Xander called out. "Please tell me you did not spend our cattle money on a new saddle when yours is perfectly fine." "Not a saddle," Xavier replied, jumping down from the wagon and moving to help Fiona. I brought home an employee. Xander, this is Miss Fiona Foster. She is going to be keeping house for us. Fiona, my brother Xander. Xander's eyes widened. You brought home a what now? Can we have this conversation inside? Xavier asked. It has been a long day, and I am sure Fiona would appreciate a chance to settle in. The interior of the house confirmed Fiona's suspicions. The place was indeed a disaster. Dishes were piled in the dry sink. Clothes were draped over every available surface, and a fine layer of dust covered most of the furniture. It was clear that two bachelor cowboys had been living here without feminine influence for quite some time. I know it looks bad, Xander said, sounding embarrassed. We have been meaning to clean up. For about 3 years, Xavier added wryly. He gestured toward a hallway. Your room is the last door on the left, Fiona. Why don't you get settled while I catch my brother up on today's events? There should be clean linens in the chest at the foot of the bed. Fiona was grateful for the chance to escape. She carried her new belongings down the hallway and found the room exactly where Xavier had indicated. It was small but comfortable, with a real bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. After sharing a cramped attic space with mice and spiders at her stepfather's house, this felt like a palace. She could hear the low murmur of voices from the main room as the brothers talked. She could not make out specific words, but she heard Xander's tone rise in surprise at one point, followed by Xavier's calmer responses. By the time she emerged, having washed the dust from her face and changed into one of her new dresses, the conversation had ended. Miss Foster, Xander said when he saw her, his manner formal but kind. My brother explained what happened in town. I want you to know that you are welcome here. We will do our best to make you comfortable. Thank you, Fiona replied. I appreciate your hospitality, both of you. I promise to earn my keep. I do not doubt it, Xavier said. But tonight you have done enough. You must be exhausted. We can sort out the details of your duties tomorrow. For now, are you hungry? We have some cold chicken and bread. They ate together at the large kitchen table, and Fiona learned more about the ranch and the brothers who ran it. Xavier and Xander had inherited the land from their mother, who had claimed it years ago when the territory was first opened for homesteading. They ran about 300 head of cattle, selling beef to the army forts and mining camps scattered throughout the region. It was hard work but profitable, especially now that the railroad had made it easier to transport goods. You have any questions about the work? Xavier asked her as they finished eating. I want to be clear about expectations. I assume cooking, cleaning, laundry, and general household management, Fiona said. Is there anything else? We need someone to keep track of supplies and help manage the books, Xavier said. Can you read and write? Yes. My father believed in education even for daughters. He made sure I learned before he went to war. Excellent. That will be a great help. Neither Xander nor I are very good with paperwork. He paused. Also, I want to establish some ground rules. Your room is your private space. Neither of us will enter without permission. You are free to come and go as you please. This is a job, not a prison. And if either of us or any of the ranch hands make you uncomfortable in any way, you come to me immediately. Or to me, Xander added. Xavier is right. You should feel safe here. Fiona felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. These men were treating her with more respect and consideration than her own stepfather ever had. I understand. Thank you. That night, lying in her new bed in her own room, Fiona stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had happened in the span of a single day. This morning, she had woken up expecting another miserable day under her stepfather's roof. Now she was living in a comfortable ranch house with two kind brothers who had given her employment and dignity. and Xavier. She could not stop thinking about the way he had stood up to Hendrix, the way he had looked at her, and said she was worth far more than a horse and saddle. No one had ever defended her like that before. No one had ever treated her like she mattered. It was too soon to call what she felt gratitude, too soon to name the flutter in her chest when Xavier smiled at her. She barely knew him. But for the first time in years, Fiona felt something that might have been hope. The next morning, Fiona woke before dawn, which was her habit. She dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen, determined to prove her worth. The stove was still warm from banking the fire the night before, and it did not take long to get it hot enough to cook. She found supplies in the pantry and set about making breakfast. By the time Xavier and Xander emerged from their rooms, the smell of coffee, bacon, and fresh biscuits filled the house. Both men stopped in their tracks when they saw the table set with food. "Is this real, or am I still sleeping?" Xander asked, staring at the spread. "If you are dreaming, then so am I," Xavier replied. He looked at Fiona with something like wonder. "You did not have to do all this on your first day." "I wanted to," Fiona said simply. "Besides, this is what you hired me for, is it not?" Breakfast was a lively affair. Xander ate like he had been starving for weeks, praising every bite. Xavier was more reserved, but she caught him watching her several times with an expression she could not quite read. After the meal, Xavier gave her a proper tour of the house and explained the household routines. The ranch hands, whose names were Sam and Diego, took their meals in the bunkhouse, which they maintained themselves. Fiona's responsibilities would focus on the main house and helping with the books once a week. "If you need anything at all, you let me know," Xavier said as they finished the tour. "I meant what I said yesterday. I want you to be comfortable here." "You have already done so much," Fiona replied. "More than I could have hoped for. It is the least you deserve." He hesitated, then added, "I want you to know, Fiona, that what almost happened yesterday with Hendrix, it made me sick. The idea that anyone would treat you like property, like you were worth no more than livestock, it goes against everything I believe in. Every person has value. Every person deserves respect and dignity. Not everyone shares your views," Fiona said quietly. "In fact, most people do not. Then most people are wrong." Xavier's voice was passionate, his eyes intense. "You are worth far more than they told you, far more than you probably believe yourself. And I hope that while you are here, you will come to see that." His words stirred something deep inside her. Fiona had spent so long being told she was worthless, a burden, an inconvenience, that she had almost started to believe it. But Xavier looked at her like she was a person of value, like her thoughts and feelings mattered. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. The days fell into a pleasant rhythm. Fiona threw herself into her work, transforming the neglected house into a proper home. She scrubbed floors, washed windows, organized the chaos that had accumulated over years of bachelor living. She cooked hearty meals that the brothers devoured with genuine appreciation. She mended their worn clothes and kept the pantry stocked and inventoried. But more than that, she began to feel like part of something. Xavier and Xander did not treat her like a servant. They asked her opinions, included her in conversations, made her feel welcome at their table. Sam and Diego, the ranch hands, were respectful and friendly. When Diego's wife came by one afternoon with vegetables from her garden, she embraced Fiona like an old friend and invited her to church on Sunday. "You should go," Xavier said when she mentioned the invitation. "Diego's wife, Maria, is wonderful. She knows everyone in the valley. It would be good for you to have friends beyond this ranch. Would you come with me?" Fiona asked before she could stop herself. "To church, I mean. I do not know anyone, and it would be easier if I had a familiar face nearby." "Of course," Xavier agreed readily. Xander and I do not make it to services as often as we should. This will be a good excuse. Sunday came, and Fiona dressed in her best dress, one of the ones Xavier had bought for her in town. It was a deep green that brought out the color of her eyes, or so Maria had told her when she saw it. Fiona spent extra time with her hair, pinning it up in a way that felt more sophisticated than her usual simple braid. When she emerged from her room, Xavier was waiting by the door. He had cleaned up too, trading his usual work clothes for a pressed shirt and clean trousers. His hair was still damp from washing, curling slightly at the ends. "You look lovely," he said, then seemed surprised by his own words. A faint blush colored his cheeks. "I mean, that dress suits you." "Thank you," Fiona replied, feeling her own face warm. "You look very presentable yourself." The church was a simple white building in the heart of Manasseh, with a bell tower and wooden pews worn smooth by years of use. It was already half full when they arrived, and Fiona felt dozens of curious eyes turn toward them as they entered. She knew what everyone was thinking, knew the rumors that must be circulating. A young woman living alone with two bachelor brothers was bound to cause talk, no matter how innocent the arrangement. Xavier seemed to sense her discomfort. He placed a gentle hand at the small of her back, guiding her toward a pew near the middle. "Ignore them," he murmured. "Let them gossip. We know the truth." The service was comforting in its familiarity. Fiona had not been to church since her mother died, but the hymns and prayers came back to her easily. She found herself relaxing, taking comfort in the ritual and community. Afterwards, as people filed out into the sunshine, Maria descended on them with her husband Diego in tow. "Fiona, I am so glad you came. Come, you must meet everyone." Maria was a force of nature, warm and vivacious. She pulled Fiona into the crowd, making introductions faster than Fiona could keep track of names. Most people were friendly if curious. A few of the older women looked disapproving, their eyes flicking between Fiona and Xavier with obvious judgment. "Do not mind them," Maria whispered when she noticed Fiona's expression. "They are suspicious of anything that might lead to happiness. They think everyone should be as miserable as they are." "I am not trying to cause scandal," Fiona said quietly. "You are not causing anything. You are living your life and doing honest work. If people want to make something ugly out of that, it is their problem, not yours." Maria squeezed her hand. "Besides, Xavier Keller is one of the finest men in this valley. Anyone who knows him knows he would never dishonor a woman under his roof." Fiona glanced over to where Xavier was talking with a group of other ranchers. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and their eyes met across the churchyard. He smiled at her and she felt her heart do something strange in her chest. "Oh," Maria said knowingly. "I see." "You see what?" Fiona asked, trying to sound innocent. "The way you look at him. The way he looks at you. That is more than an employer and employee. You are imagining things. I have only been at the ranch for 2 weeks. 2 weeks or 2 years, the heart knows what it wants." Maria's expression grew serious. "But be careful, yes. You are in a vulnerable position. Make sure of his intentions before you give your heart away." Fiona wanted to protest that she had not given her heart away, that what she felt for Xavier was simply gratitude for his kindness. But the words stuck in her throat because she was not sure they would be true. Over the past 2 weeks, she had found herself thinking about him constantly. The way he laughed at Xander's jokes, the gentleness with which he handled the horses, the careful consideration he showed when making decisions. He was unlike any man she had ever known, and she was falling for him without meaning to. The realization terrified her. She had no business developing feelings for her employer. The power imbalance alone made it inappropriate, and what if he did not feel the same way? What if her feelings made him uncomfortable and he let her go? She would be right back where she started, alone and desperate. She pushed the thoughts aside and focused on the present moment, on the sunshine and the friendly faces around her. There would be time enough to worry about her heart later. The weeks turned into months, and autumn painted the valley in shades of gold and crimson. Fiona had never been happier in her life. The work was hard but satisfying, and she took pride in the transformation of the house. More than that, she had found friendship with Maria and several other women in the valley. She no longer felt like an outsider. Her relationship with Xavier had deepened into something that felt dangerously close to intimacy, though nothing inappropriate had occurred. They talked for hours in the evenings after Xander had gone to bed, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams for the future. Xavier told her about his childhood, about the hard years after his father died, about his determination to make the ranch succeed in honor of his mother's memory. Fiona told him about the years before her own mother's death, when she had been happy and safe and loved. "You miss her terribly?" Xavier asked one night as they sat on the front porch watching the stars emerge. "Every day," Fiona admitted, "but the grief has softened with time. Now I can remember the good times without being overwhelmed by the loss." "I am glad you can talk about her. It means her memory lives on. What about you? Do you still grieve for your mother?" "Always. But like you said, it is softer now, more bittersweet than sharp." He was quiet for a moment. "I wish she could have met you. She would have liked you very much." "What makes you say that?" "Because you are strong and kind and resourceful, all the things she valued most." He turned to look at her, his expression earnest in the starlight. "Fiona, I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" "These past months, having you here, they have been the best of my life. You have brought light and warmth to this house, and not just because you keep it clean and cook good food. You have made it feel like a home. You have made me feel like I could have more than just work and survival. You have made me hope for things I had given up on." "Xavier," she whispered, hardly daring to breathe. "I know it is too soon. I know you might not feel the same way. But I cannot keep pretending that what I feel is simply gratitude or respect. Fiona, I have fallen in love with you, completely, irrevocably in love with you, and I need you to know that even if you do not feel the same way." Tears sprang to her eyes. "You love me with everything I am. I love your courage and your gentle spirit. I love how you hum while you cook and the way you laugh at Xander's terrible jokes. I love that you are kind to everyone but fierce when defending what is right. I love you for who you are, not for what you can do for me." "I thought I was imagining it," Fiona said, her voice trembling. "I thought I was seeing what I wanted to see because I have fallen in love with you too. I tried to fight it, tried to tell myself it was just gratitude, but it is so much more than that. You saved me, Xavier. Not just from Hendrix, but from a life of despair and hopelessness. You showed me that I have value, that I deserve respect and kindness. You made me believe in myself again." "You always had value," Xavier said fiercely. "I just helped you remember it." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, reverent, as if she were something precious. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," she breathed. "Please." The kiss was everything she had dreamed of and more. Tender and sweet, full of promise and hope. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. "So what happens now?" Fiona asked. "Now I court you properly," Xavier said, "with flowers and poetry and all the romantic gestures you deserve. And when enough time has passed that nobody can accuse me of taking advantage, I am going to ask you to marry me. If you will have me, that is." "I will have you," Fiona said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Of course I will have you. I would marry you tomorrow if it would not cause scandal." "Let them talk," Xavier said. "But I want to do this right. I want everyone to know that you are not some convenience or transaction. You are the woman I love, the woman I choose, and I am going to spend the rest of my life proving to you how much you are worth." They sat together on the porch until late into the night, holding hands and making plans for their future. Fiona felt like she was floating, like she had stepped into a dream from which she never wanted to wake. The next morning, Xander took one look at them and broke into a wide grin. "About time," he said. "I was beginning to think you two were going to dance around each other forever." "You knew?" Fiona asked, surprised. "Everyone knew, except apparently you two." Xander clapped his brother on the shoulder. "I am happy for you, Xavi, both of you. You deserve this." True to his word, Xavier courted Fiona with all the romance and attention she had ever dreamed of. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow and wrote her clumsy but heartfelt poetry that made her laugh and swoon in equal measure. He took her riding through the valley, showing her his favorite spots and sharing his vision for expanding the ranch. He treated her like she was precious, cherished, loved. The gossip in town was intense at first, but gradually died down as people saw that the relationship was genuine. Maria was delighted, planning their wedding with more enthusiasm than either of them. Even the disapproving church ladies eventually softened, won over by the obvious devotion between the couple. 6 months after that first kiss, Xavier proposed officially with a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. They were married in the same church where they had attended that first service together, surrounded by friends and neighbors who had come to accept their love story. The wedding night was tender and passionate, full of laughter and gentle exploration. Xavier was patient and loving, making sure Fiona felt safe and cherished. As they lay together afterwards, wrapped in each other's arms, Fiona marveled at how drastically her life had changed. "What are you thinking?" Xavier asked, running his fingers through her unbound hair. "I am thinking about that day in town, when my stepfather tried to trade me away. I thought my life was over. I thought I would never know happiness or love, and now look at me. I am married to the most wonderful man I have ever known, and I am happier than I ever thought possible." "You deserve all of it," Xavier murmured. "Every bit of happiness and more. Do you remember what you said that day, when you stopped the transaction? I told you that you were worth far more than a horse and saddle. You did, and you have spent every day since proving it to me, not with words but with actions, with respect and kindness and love. You showed me my own worth when I had forgotten it." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for seeing me when I had become invisible. Thank you for choosing me." "It was the easiest choice I have ever made," Xavier replied, "and I will keep choosing you every day for the rest of my life." Life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Fiona was no longer just the housekeeper, but the lady of the house, Xavier's wife and partner in every sense. She helped him with the business side of ranching, her organizational skills proving invaluable. Together they expanded the herd and improved the breeding stock. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Xander continued to live with them, and the three formed a close-knit family. He was protective of Fiona in a brotherly way, and she grew to love him like the sibling she had never had. When he eventually started courting a quiet seamstress from town named Sarah, Fiona was delighted to play matchmaker. A year into their marriage, Fiona discovered she was pregnant. The news filled both her and Xavier with joy tinged with nervous anticipation. Xavier became even more protective, insisting she rest more and work less. Fiona found it both endearing and exasperating. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she told him one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from lifting a basket of laundry. "I know, but I cannot help worrying. You are carrying our child, the most precious thing in the world besides you yourself. The baby and I are both healthy. The doctor said so. You need to relax." But Xavier could not relax, not until their son was born healthy and squalling in the spring of 1875. They named him Samuel, after Xavier's father, and he was the light of their lives. Xavier was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with his son, watching her husband cradle their baby, singing soft lullabies in a voice rough from disuse. Fiona felt her heart swell almost painfully. This man who had saved her from a terrible fate, who had shown her love and respect when she had nothing, was now the father of her child. Their family was growing, their love deepening with each passing day. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter they named Clara, after Fiona's mother. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes, and she wrapped both parents around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. Life was not without its challenges. There were hard winters when they worried about the cattle. There were years when disease struck the herd and they faced financial strain. There were the usual conflicts that came with running a ranch and raising children. But through it all, Fiona and Xavier faced everything together, their love the foundation that kept them strong. Maria and Diego became Clara's godparents, and their children grew up alongside Samuel and Clara. Xander married his seamstress Sarah, and they built a house on the far end of the property. The ranch expanded until it was one of the most successful in the San Luis Valley. As the years passed, Fiona sometimes thought back to that day in Manassas when her life had hung in the balance. She thought about the girl she had been, broken and hopeless, believing she had no value. And she thought about the man who had seen past her circumstances to the person she truly was. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Xavier surprised her with a special gift. He led her out to the barn where a beautiful mare stood in one of the stalls, saddled and ready. "I do not understand," Fiona said, confused. "This is Bella," Xavier explained. "She is yours. I bought her from a breeder in Denver, paid a small fortune for her. She is one of the finest horses in Colorado. She is beautiful, but why?" Xavier smiled and pulled an elaborately tooled saddle from the tack room. It was clear he had it custom-made, with intricate leather work and silver fittings that must have cost more than most people made in a year. "You remember what I said the day we met, that you were worth far more than a horse and saddle?" "Of course I remember. I want you to have this. Not because I think you can be bought or traded, but because you deserve beautiful things. You deserve the finest horse and the finest saddle, and everything else good this world has to offer. But more than that, I want you to know that even if this horse were worth $1,000 and this saddle 1,000 more, it still would not come close to your value. You are priceless, Fiona. You always have been." Tears streamed down Fiona's face. "I love you so much. I love you too. More than words can express." He helped her mount the mare. "Now let us ride. I want to show you the future I see for us." They rode out together across the land they had built into a home. Xavier pointed out his plans for expansion, his dreams for their children's future. But more than that, they simply enjoyed being together. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life full of love and purpose. That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat on the porch as they had so many years ago when Xavier first confessed his love. The stars were just as bright, the mountain air just as crisp and clean. "You have any regrets?" Xavier asked, holding her close. "Not a single one," Fiona replied honestly. "My life before you was full of pain and hardship, but it led me here to you, to this beautiful life we have built. I would not change a thing. Not even the hard parts, especially not the hard parts. They made me who I am. They taught me to value what we have, to never take our happiness for granted." Xavier kissed the top of her head. "You know what I think about most often?" "What?" "How close I came to never meeting you. If I had been elsewhere that day, if I had not heard what was happening, if I had decided it was not my business. We would have missed each other entirely. You would have ended up with Hendrix or someone equally terrible, and I would have continued on alone, never knowing what I was missing. But you were there. You did intervene. You saved me. We saved each other, Xavier corrected. I was just going through the motions of life before you came along. Working, surviving, but not really living. You gave me purpose beyond the ranch. You gave me a family, a reason to build something lasting. You saved me just as much as I saved you. Fiona turned in his arms to face him. Even after 10 years of marriage, the sight of him still made her heart race. Then we are both very lucky. The luckiest people alive. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. In the distance, they could hear the cattle lowing softly and the occasional whinny from the horses in the barn. From inside the house came the sound of Samuel talking in his sleep, probably dreaming of the adventures he had been on that day. This was her life now. This peace, this contentment, this love. Fiona had been traded for a horse and saddle, dismissed as worthless by the man who should have protected her. But Xavier had seen her true value, had recognized her worth when nobody else did. He had not just told her she was worth more. He had spent every day since proving it with his actions and his unwavering love. As the years continued to pass, the ranch grew from a modest operation to one of the most respected spreads in southern Colorado. Samuel grew into a capable young man who shared his father's love of ranching and his mother's sharp mind for business. Clara, spirited and independent, shocked everyone by announcing at 15 that she wanted to study medicine, and her parents supported her ambitions fully. Xander and Sarah had 3 children of their own, and the extended family gatherings were loud, chaotic, and filled with love. Maria and Diego's children remained close friends with the Keller clan, and the families celebrated holidays and milestones together. Fiona became known throughout the valley as a woman of compassion and wisdom. She helped establish a school in Manassas, served on the church council, and quietly assisted women who found themselves in situations similar to the one she had once faced. More than one desperate woman found refuge at the Keller Ranch, and Fiona made sure they had the resources and support to build better lives. "You cannot save everyone," Xavier told her once, when she had been particularly affected by a case of domestic violence in town. "I know," Fiona replied. "But I can save some, and maybe those I save will go on to save others. Kindness ripples outward like water. Your act of kindness to me has rippled out through everything I do. I am simply passing it along." Xavier pulled her close. "I am so proud of you. Of the woman you are, of the difference you make in people's lives. You made me who I am today. You gave me the foundation to become this person. No, my love, you were always this person. I just helped you remember." On their 25th wedding anniversary, the family threw a large celebration. The house and yard were filled with neighbors, friends, and well-wishers. Samuel, now 24 and newly married himself, gave a toast. "My parents have shown me what love looks like," he said, raising his glass. Not the easy, surface kind of love, but the deep, abiding kind that grows stronger through hardship and time. "They built this ranch from almost nothing, raised my sister and me to be good people, and created a legacy of kindness and integrity. But more than that, they showed me that every person has inherent worth, regardless of their circumstances. My father taught me that when he saw my mother's value when nobody else did. And my mother taught me that strength is not about never falling down, but about getting back up and helping others do the same. I am blessed to be their son." Fiona wiped away tears as the crowd applauded. Later, when most of the guests had gone and only close family remained, she and Xavier stole away to their favorite spot on the porch. 25 years, Xavier mused. Where did the time go? Into a life well lived, Fiona replied, settling against his shoulder. Into children raised and dreams achieved, into love deepened and strengthened. If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard times, the drought of '79, the winter we nearly lost everything. Not even those. They tested us and proved what we were made of. Every challenge we faced together made us stronger. He took her hand, his thumb tracing the worn gold band she still wore. Do you remember our wedding day? Every detail. You were so nervous you almost dropped the ring. I was terrified. Not of marrying you, but of somehow not being enough, of failing to give you the life you deserved. You gave me everything I never dared dream of, Fiona said softly. A home, a family, respect, love. You gave me myself back, Xavier. That is a gift beyond measure. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat together in the peaceful quiet. The house behind them was full of the people they loved most in the world. The land around them was evidence of their hard work and dedication. But most importantly, they had each other. Years continued to accumulate like snow on the mountains. Samuel took over more of the ranch operations as Xavier slowed down, though Xavier remained actively involved well into his 60s. Clara became a doctor, one of the first female physicians in Colorado, and opened a practice in Denver while visiting the ranch frequently. Grandchildren arrived, filling the house with noise and laughter. Fiona delighted in spoiling them as only a grandmother could, while Xavier taught them to ride and rope and respect the land. On a warm spring evening in 1898, Xavier and Fiona celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by 3 generations of family. The ranch was now run primarily by Samuel and his sons, but it still felt like home. That night, lying in bed with his wife of 40 years, Xavier felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the life they had built. "What are you thinking about?" Fiona asked, her head on his chest as it had been so many thousands of nights before. "I am thinking about how different things could have been, how close we came to never finding each other. But we did find each other. That is what matters. You know what the best part of my life has been?" Xavier asked, "Tell me." "Every single day with you, not the big moments, though those were wonderful, but the everyday moments. Morning coffee together, working side by side, raising our children, growing old together. Those are the moments that made life worth living." Fiona lifted her head to look at him. Even with silver in her hair and lines on her face, she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "I love you, Xavier Keller. I have loved you from the moment you told me I was worth more than a horse and saddle. And I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Fiona Keller. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had done for 40 years, and in the morning they woke to another day of the beautiful life they had created together. The years that followed were gentle ones. Xavier and Fiona settled into a comfortable rhythm of retirement, though they remained active in the ranch's operations and the broader community. They traveled occasionally, visiting Clara in Denver and exploring parts of the country they had never seen. But they always returned to the ranch, to the land that had been the backdrop of their love story. When Xavier's health began to fail in his early 70s, Fiona nursed him with the same fierce devotion he had shown her throughout their marriage. She sat by his bedside, holding his hand, reminding him of all the beautiful moments they had shared. "No regrets," Xavier said one evening, his voice weak but steady. "Not a single regret." "None at all," Fiona agreed, fighting back tears. "Promise me something," he said. "Anything." "Keep living. Keep helping people. Keep spreading kindness. The world needs more people like you." "The world needs more people like you," Fiona corrected. "You saved me, Xavier. You gave me a life I never thought possible." "We saved each other," he insisted, echoing words he had spoken so many years before. "And we built something beautiful. A family, a legacy, a love that will outlast us both." He passed away peacefully in his sleep a few weeks later, surrounded by family. Fiona grieved deeply, but she also felt profound gratitude for the years they had shared. 46 years of marriage, 50 years of knowing each other. It was more than many people got, and she treasured every moment. She remained on the ranch, supported by her children and grandchildren. She continued her work helping women in need, establishing a fund in Xavier's name to provide resources for those escaping difficult situations. She told their story often, wanting future generations to understand that love could bloom in the darkest circumstances, that kindness could change lives, that every person had inherent worth regardless of their situation. On what would have been their 50th wedding anniversary, the family gathered at the ranch to remember Xavier and celebrate the love story that had shaped all their lives. Fiona stood before them, now in her early 70s, but still sharp and strong. "Your grandfather saved me," she told her assembled grandchildren and great-grandchildren. "But not in the way you might think. Yes, he prevented me from being traded away like property. Yes, he gave me employment and security, but the real way he saved me was by seeing me, by recognizing my worth when I had forgotten it myself. He taught me that love is not about grand gestures, though those are nice. It is about daily choices, about treating each other with respect and kindness, about building something together that is greater than either person alone." She looked at the faces before her, seeing Xavier in the shape of a grandson's jaw, in the color of a granddaughter's eyes. Their love lived on in these children and would continue long after she was gone. "Love well," she told them. "Love fiercely and faithfully. See the worth in every person you meet. Extend kindness whenever possible. That is the legacy your grandfather and I want to leave you. Not just this ranch or financial security, but the understanding that love, real love, can transform lives and change the world." That night, sitting alone on the porch, Fiona felt Xavier's presence strongly. She could almost hear his voice on the wind, almost feel his hand in hers. "You were right," she said aloud to the stars. "I was worth far more than a horse and saddle, but it took your love to make me believe it. Thank you, my darling. Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for loving me. Thank you for the life we built together. I will carry you in my heart until we meet again." A gentle breeze stirred the air, warm and comforting. Fiona smiled through her tears. Their love story had begun with an act of kindness in a dusty street and had grown into something that touched countless lives. It was a legacy worth leaving. Several more years passed, and Fiona lived to see her great-grandchildren grow. She remained mentally sharp and physically active well into her late 70s, a testament to a life well lived. She took particular joy in telling stories to the youngest generation, making sure they knew their family history and the values that had built their legacy. On a quiet autumn evening, much like the one when Xavier had first told her he loved her, Fiona passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was buried next to Xavier on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the big sky they had both loved so much. At her funeral, Clara stood to speak about her mother. "My mother taught me that circumstances do not define you. She came from nothing, was treated as worthless, and could have let that break her. Instead, she built a life of meaning and purpose. She helped countless people, raised children who went on to help others, and showed everyone she met what true strength looked like. But I think what I will remember most is her love story with my father. They showed me what a true partnership looks like, what it means to choose each other every single day, what love looks like when it grows deeper over decades. Their love created ripples that will continue long after we are all gone. The ranch continued to prosper under Samuel's management, and eventually his children's. The fund Fiona had established in Xavier's name helped hundreds of women over the years, giving them the same second chance Fiona herself had received. The family remained close-knit and active in the community, embodying the values of kindness and compassion their matriarch and patriarch had lived by. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind whispered through the valley, ranch hands swore they could see two figures sitting on the porch of the old house. A tall cowboy and a dark-haired woman, holding hands and watching the stars come out, their love eternal and enduring. The story of how Xavier had saved Fiona from being traded for a horse and saddle, and how he had told her she was worth far more, became family legend. It was told and retold to each new generation, a reminder that every person has inherent worth, that kindness can change lives, and that real love sees beyond circumstances to the person within. Their love had started in the darkest of circumstances, but had grown into something luminous and lasting. It had created a family, built a legacy, and touched countless lives. And though both Xavier and Fiona were long gone, their love story lived on, a testament to the transformative power of seeing another person's true worth and the beautiful life that can grow from a single act of courage and compassion. The ranch still stands today, run by the sixth generation of Kellers, a sprawling operation that has adapted to modern times while maintaining the values established so long ago. And on a hill overlooking it all, two simple headstones stand side by side. The inscriptions are worn now but still legible. Xavier Samuel Keller. Beloved husband, father, grandfather, he saw worth where others saw none. Fiona Clara Keller. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she was worth far more than a horse and saddle, and she proved it every day. And beneath both inscriptions, the same simple phrase, together forever. Their love story ended not with death, but with the eternal bond they had forged, a love that transcended time and circumstance. They had found each other against all odds, built something beautiful together, and left a legacy that would endure for generations. It was a love story for the ages, proving that even in the harsh reality of the frontier West, love could bloom, grow strong, and last forever.